What's going on, guys? It is Mr. Lux, aka the Merry Gamer. In today's video I want to talk about my feelings on MLB The Show 18, more specifically in Road to the Show and in player locks, which is kind of the most of the content that is on my channel. That's what you guys come to my channel for. That's what you like to see. So this, somewhat of review or an assessment is my opinion on those two aspects of this game. So let's start with Road to the Show. That is the game mode that I've put most of my time into in all of MLB The Show's games. I mostly play Road to the Show, and then I mix in the player locks for my YouTube content. So what did they do this year with Road to the Show? Well, they kind of built on what they started last year in MLB The Show 17, where they introduced this narrator mode, or kind of like a story mode aspect a little bit, kind of teetering on those lines of a story mode. And while it was a first step to introducing that kind of new way to play the mode, and Ramon Russell said it himself, this is a year one of a multi-year process. So even they knew that this first attempt was going to be very light on kind of like the immersion into that mode. Basically, it was, you reading text with the narrator kind of just generically making statements as the player asks or the player did. He always would refer to you as the player, never really refer to you by your first name or last name, even though a lot of the names are in the game's database. But, you can kind of overlook those things because we know that this is just kind of like a really light, very light first attempt as to trying to make the mode more engaging for players. So I get that. It really wasn't my cup of tea. It didn't feel like it with the decisions you made in those interactions in the story mode. The decisions you made, they didn't feel like they really impacted anything, as it always felt like it was still going to get you back to the main part of the game, no matter which options that you chose. Maybe it may take you just a little bit longer depending on the type of decisions you make, but ultimately, no matter what you did, you were still going to end up at the same spot. So that was fine. And the one thing I really enjoy about Road to the Show is, just like I mentioned before, is the immersion to the mode. I mean, it allows you to live out a fantasy. It allows you to become something that you otherwise in real life probably would not be able to achieve, and that's becoming a professional athlete for many of us. Regardless of your background, a lot of us may not have went to, excelled in school all the way through high school and college and even getting drafted. So this allows you to kind of live out that fantasy in sports. And that's pretty cool. I like that. They do it in all sports. I mean, NBA 2K has their mode as well. So does Madden. So, playing baseball, it was really cool. I played baseball when I was young. Never was a sport that I really wanted to pursue as I got older in high school and in college. I was more of a football, basketball kind of person. But I enjoyed playing baseball when I was young. I enjoyed the atmosphere. I enjoyed just the smell of the environment of the ballpark, smelling the grass, smelling the hot dogs and the nachos in the background, the atmosphere, hearing people cheer, hearing the crack of the bat, seeing the lights come on as it starts to get, twilight and stuff like that. Those were a lot of the cool memories I remember that really made me feel like, baseball was just really fun to be a part of. So in game modes like Road to the Show, I kind of relived those fantasies as a young kid. And, the changes that they make to the mode to try to make it more immersive, for me, some of these changes I like, some that I prefer they would have made a different approach on. So let's kind of go back in time a little bit to MLB 15 The Show. That's when they will put the year right after the MLB word. They've since changed the name to MLB The Show and then insert year. But back in MLB 15 The Show, they had the fielding mechanic, and you guys who follow my channel, who watch me on my live streams, or even seen all of my videos, I mention this from time to time. Going to the immersion part of Road to the Show, they had a really cool fielding mechanic in the game where, if you chose an outfield, or even if you had an infield and it was a pop fly, Any ball that was in the air, like high up in the sky, the camera perspective for your player would kind of shift like really low, but it would be tilted upward to the sky, so you would feel like you're looking through the lens of that player. And I really enjoyed that. I really liked that because it made me feel like it was me one-on-one with the ball making the play for my team. Now, true enough, they could have tweaked it a little bit as far as the indicators to give you a better sense of where you need to move your player. I feel that they could have refined that a little bit more. But all in all, I really enjoyed it. And to this day, I still have kept MLB 15 The Show because of that reason. And the reason why I kept it is because when they went into MLB The Show 16, they removed that particular fielding mechanic altogether. They didn't leave it as an option, as a legacy option. They removed it altogether to go to a more casual friendly or an easier type of fielding mechanic, to where if you're in the outfield and the ball is hit, the camera would, instead of focusing on the ball in the sky, it would actually transition to a ball marker on the field, and you would just run your player to it and then let them play out the animation to make the play. I didn't like this at all, to be honest with you, because it felt like it took a lot of the control out of the player's hands and just left it up to just, the game is running on rails like it's on autopilot. And I get it. It's, they want to make the mode more accessible to a lot more players. I completely understand that. But the big problem I have with the developers of this game, Sony San Diego, is that when they introduce new mechanics in the game, they completely remove what the previous mechanic was. They pigeonhole you in. They funnel you into playing this one style only. And I don't think that's very good for the longevity of a game. The lifespan of a game is always going to be about player options. Let me configure the game to best suit my style of play. That's what engages players, not introducing a new way to play and letting that be the only option that everybody has. Because in this day and time, let's be honest, we have two distinct different types of players. You have your casual audience and you have your hardcore audience. Your casual audience, they're going to want stuff that's a little simple to pick up and play, easy to understand, not as much effort to have to try to do something to make a play. As your hardcore audience, those are the ones that want to tweak the sliders to make it more sim-like, to make it a little more difficult. Those are the ones that really want a realistic approach to the game. And I consider myself falling into that category. So when they remove that fielding option enrolled to the show and player locking, it made playing in the outfield less fun for me. And my player was a shortstop at the beginning of his career, but then I simmed a season and somehow he got bumped into the outfield. So I was like, whatever, I'll keep playing, no big deal. So most of my gameplay was in the outfield. Now keep in mind, in MLB 15 The Show, I did create an outfielder. I think he was a right fielder, as a matter of fact. So I'm very familiar with playing in the outfield in the game. But when certain features or certain options for gameplay are removed that was in the game, and you gotten used to that, it makes it a tough transition to try to adopt to a different style of gameplay. So I wasn't too thrilled with that, but I made it work. I dealt with it. It is what it is, as they say. There's not much I can do because they're not going to go back in and patch anything like that. They'll let you know that they're not a big studio, so they only can devote so much time to doing things. And they're very quick to let you know that too. So that's why there's really no need in complaining about it. You can tweet and voice your concerns about trying to find out why, or give some constructive criticism. But at the end of the day, if it's not something about Diamond Dynasty, something that's making them money, they're really not going to really devote a lot of attention to stuff like that, especially when they know that they probably can't do it because of maybe budget costs and all that stuff. So that's the fielding mechanic enrolled to the show. They changed that. Didn't like it too well, but we have to deal with it. So now we move into MLB The Show 18. They further refined the fielding camera, when now what they've done now is they pull the camera out so you can see more of the field laterally. So you have a lot more visual perspective to the left and right. So your peripherals are a lot more, you know, apparent now in the game, which is good in a lot of circumstances, especially when you're playing in the infield. It gives you a lot more time to react. Yeah, well, not a lot more time, but it gives you a better time to react, and you can also see, you know, the bases that you cover. And it works also in the outfield. You know, you can see how much ground you have to cover as a player. So it kind of makes it, when you're running to the ball, it kind of gives it a more of an action type of feel, like a lot more sense of urgency. I do think the camera is pushed back a little too far. They did introduce a cone as your player is running toward the ball, and that cone, it starts out wide. As you get closer to the location where the ball is going to land, it narrows in. So it kind of gives you an indicator of how close you are to making the play. They still have the ball marker on the field, so there's always going to be that. So, you know, that's cool. I really don't care for it when you're hitting, because what they've done now is in Road to the Show, as what they had, how I talked about the fielding, how you immersed yourself within that player. They've now taken that same camera angle and have it to where when you're hitting. So now you don't get those camera angles when you hit the ball initially and it's in the air. Your player, the camera always kind of shifted upwards to show you the ball as your player is running, so you can feel like, again, you're in that player's head. You're watching that ball as you're running to first base or as you're rounding the bases. They've taken that out. They've added new real-time home run camera angles now when you hit the ball. They don't even have those implemented in Road to the Show, which, by the way, is their most played mode, and also in player lock mode. So really weird design decisions where they introduced something new in this year's game, but in their most played mode, that doesn't even, it's not even there. You know, you can only see that when you're playing a regular game or if you're not doing a player lock. So I find that very odd. Now, I did create a bug report. It's not really a bug, it's more of a design decision, but we'll see what happens with that. I doubt that anything will. But, you know, it's really weird. And, you know, I sent them a picture of an example of how it looked in, you know, MLB The Show 17 versus how it looks now when your player hits the ball and you get that initial tracking of the ball as you're running. It's just not there. I've hit no doubt home runs, and like that exciting moment is kind of dulled because you don't get that sense of, like, you know, excitement when you see the ball traveling over the fence or out of the stadium, because the camera angle is so low, because it only focuses on your player. The camera angle is so low, all you see is the opposing team. They all stand still and they're turned around looking at the fence. And half the time you can't even tell which, you know, where the ball is going over the fence, because you get the same camera perspective of your player running to first base. And it's made even worse if you're already on base and your teammate hits the ball, because now the camera always stays behind your player. So if I'm on second base and somebody hits the ball to right field, I can't even get a jump on my run to third base, because I don't know if it's a ground ball, if it's a pop fly, if they caught it, if they didn't catch it. You can't even see that, because you don't get to see any of the action, which, by the way, the default camera last year and years past, it would follow the ball even when your player's on base. It would just kind of, the camera would just pan around and show your person from the front view, so you can keep track of where the ball is. Now, you can manually do this in the game by holding down the R1 button, but my thing is, why should I have to do that when it was the default camera last year? Why are you forcing me to play? Again, the design decisions that they make, they force you to play a certain way. So why are you forcing me to play with this camera angle to get a perspective where I can follow where the ball is that was in last year's game by default? I have to hold R1 now so that the camera will switch to focusing on the ball. Just really weird decisions that they make with no true explanation as to why they done it this way. They'll hold these streams and they'll show you all the good stuff. They'll sit and show all the cool things about how it's beneficial, but then they don't really talk about the stuff where they've implemented it where it's actually a hindrance to the gameplay. And that's what it is for me. It's like I have to hold down, I have to keep in mind to hold down R1 when my teammate hits the ball, so I can follow the ball, so I can know if I need to tag up or if I can just keep running to get an extra base. The same way when you're trying to steal. You know, if you're trying to steal, you can't, the ball doesn't follow from the pitcher's hand to the catcher, so you can't see how much of a jump you need to get, or if you need to slide going into second. It's very odd to me. So, you know, these are just my concerns regarding Roll to the Show and player lock. I'm going to still put out content for you guys. I'm going to still give you those player locks, whole live streams and everything. But it's definitely something that it's been a growing concern of mine, of certain directions that they're taking this game as they try to find ways to make it fresh. The problem is this game is a victim of its own success. Gameplay has been great, and there's not much they can really do from here on out. So that's why we see these gimmicky types of modes and features added. But anyway, guys, I want to thank you for your time. I'm Mr. Lux, aka The Merry Gamer, and I'm out. Peace.